Our writing tools are working on our thoughts. This quote might be well known by Friedrich Nietzsche, and I guess it was a very new thought maybe in the 19th century, but nowadays everyone does know that more or less. Of course, it's important to know our tools, and the best is to shape them on your own. So, to draw two examples, which you might also know. In 1953, Karl-Heinz Stockhausen was in the studio and he wanted to make his first sine tone composition, and he wanted to create a chord of sine tones, but he only had one sine tone generator. So how did he solve this then? He had the idea that he recorded it in the three, or I don't know how much, say 3 different tones, one after the other, and then mounted the tapes one after the other, that he had an arpeggio. And then he went to the echo chamber of the radio station, where then with the echo effect, this arpeggio melts together to the chord he needed. So you could say, for certain ideas, you need special means to realize them. But it can also be the opposite, that certain ideas only come up when you have special means. Marshall McLuhan said, we shape our tools and then in turn they shape us. A good example is Morton Feldman, who, for example, decided only to write with ink and not with the pencil and not with the rubber, which means that he had really to concentrate, because he couldn't rubber it away if he makes a mistake, and if he writes a mistake, then he has to deal with that false tone and compose something around the false tone that it's no longer a false tone. So in this case, there is first an idea of a media, which then produces a specific idea, so a specific music. And so I would say this sentence by Marshall McLuhan, that we shape our tools and then in turn they shape us, that's a creative strategy to come to new ideas. So on the one hand, you could say there is an idea, and then you find the media for it, like the Stockhausen example, or there's the media, and then you get an idea through this media. And I believe that the second case is much more often. Look at the cinema. The cinema, I wouldn't regard it as an artistic invention. It was a technical invention. It took, in fact, 20 years until cinema was an own art. So what are the media in music, besides the structures and with the notes or the material? So, of course, these are the pencils and the sheets of paper and the desk. The instruments, of course, are a media, and it's an idea with the instrumentalists to work with. You can create these tools, and the concert hall you can somehow shape, or you can shape all your life circumstances, which is all, of course, can change. And I believe if you want to make a new music, you have to somehow not only thinking of new structures, new material, think of all the media around your life, which can also help you or give rise to a new music. But we are not talking about all these lower things. I'm now only talking about the rubbers and the pencils and the sheets of paper, which in my case is now the software COIT. I was constantly programming since 2007, since I wanted to shape tools which then in turn shape me. So, COIT means calculated objects in time. Calculated means I'm using the computer. The big advantage of the computer, first of all, is that he can calculate much more and faster than the human brain can. And object means that I'm working with nodes. That's an important thing. That's not so common in working with a computer. First of all, the the big advantage of electronic music was the continuum, that you don't have notes, that you don't have a quintuplet when you make electronic music. But I decided to work with notes, with isolated objects. You will see it soon what that means. And in time means that it can be played back in time on the computer, which also means that I can listen to it. And therefore I'm using puredata, it was already mentioned, the open source software which is for free available on the net and which is, has all the means that I needed to create my software. Now I have a bit of a problem. I have to show you, this is my workstation at home, it's my studio, and as you can see I have 3 big monitors. And now for this presentation I do not only have one monitor, but one, and that's how it looks when I'm working with my software, so I have a lot amount of windows opened. But now I only have this space for my presentation because it's not only one screen, but one small screen due to the projector. So I have now to somehow compress everything into this small screen just to explain to you. Now a bit the problem, but I will somehow handle it. But we have to look on a bit of fragment. Okay, now I'm changing to the software. That's now that's. I have to do it here. Okay, that's my sheet of paper, so to say. And as you can see, it's not the 5 normal lines, but it's an equidistant system of pitches. But this is the pitch domain, and of course the time domain is the other axis. And there I can now, let's remove this, write my notes. I can extend it a bit, at least. Oh, it's a better projector than I expected. It's not so bad. At home I practice it with much lower resolution. Okay, so here is my sheet of paper, and here I can start to compose. So, for example, I can set an object here on the left hand. I have, this is, if you move your head like this is a piano scale. Yeah, so here is the C, here is the C sharp and the D, and D sharp and E and F, and so on and so forth. And now I'm giving a metronome. So this is my metronome. This is 60 beats per minute, and this is, I can listen to it. Yeah, a chromatic scale played by the piano. So these are my objects, and each object has two numbers. The first is the instrument number. So for example, 2 is the piano mezzo forte, whereas 3 would be, let's change it to all objects to 3, and then this is the piano fortissimo. Or let's make one, this, I know 15 is the piano pizzicato. Of course, I'm not doing like this, it's only for demonstration. Okay, one was missing. And the second number is, I can now make a microtonal deviation. So these are a cent deviation. Now let's make this last tone 50 cents lower. Okay, this. Yeah, so this is, I can make quarter tones and everything which is possible in the cent domain. Okay, but normally, yeah, with the instruments I have here now a big, here I can choose all my instruments, it's in German, you see, but here the piano, accordion, violin and viola and cello and so on and so forth. I have a big, very, very big bank of samples of all these instruments. I'm talking about later about this E player furthermore, but now only to, as you can see, this is the viola. Here I can choose between all these techniques, so viola arco pianissimo, viola arco mezzo forte fortissimo, and arco al ponticello, arco sul tasto, overtone glissando, all the overtones, tremolo, and so on and so forth. Hotel mute, okay, this is just examples of these samples. Yeah, and I can choose this and then compose my piece of music. And then, of course, what you're doing on the computer all the time, that you make copy and paste. So here's the scale, and I can copy it 1,000 times. And so this could be regarded as composing. That's like writing notes, but I'm doing it on the computer, and I can listen to the result immediately and try out a lot of things. How would that sound? Of course. Yeah, and this is, so the 0 object is my metronome, and now let's make it much faster, say 150, and so on and so forth. But I do not only want to enter single notes. For example, I've made this device where I can, let's take again the piano. Let's take piano mezzoforte. And here I can draw such a line, for example. So let's do this and apply it. Okay, here it is. And back. Okay, or maybe not in this fast tempo. Okay, but you can imagine. Or also, what I just... okay, but that's a new module. It's not completely developed, but I could also enter chromatic notes on this matrix. But I'm still working on that just to get it. So I could here put notes in a way, but all for that. So that's more or less writing notes by hand. But what I was also interested. Okay, this about the notation. Of course, when you go back to the beginning. Now with this equidistant and space notation, if I enter a C major chord, that a C major chord would look like this. And of course, I guess you wouldn't recognize immediately that this is C major. Or now, what's this? Yeah, sorry. Yes, C minor. After years of working with it, for me, I recognize this immediately. This is C major. This would be A minor. But of course, you have to be accustomed to this. That's very different to the traditional notation. But in theory, it's much closer to atonality, of course. Forget something. Oh yeah, and what's also possible is to create a glissando. So here, with a piano tone, so to say, now I can draw a glissando, which is called not possible with a real piano, but say with, let's take the violin. No, it's a computerized glissando, but at least you get an impression. And a real music piece, for example, would look like this. That's a score for a piece I wrote for Ensemble Moderne 4 years ago. That's still not so much tones, but another different colors are more or less the different instrument groups. So this is again the piano. These are woodwinds. Whereas these are this drum section, and that's how it sounds like. Yeah, and the green ones are the strings. And of course I can then export to an ordinary notation software like Finale. So this score then would in Finale be this. it's not done with one mouse click, but it works. And it sounds, when also Modern is playing, it sounds like this. Okay, back. But the next step was that I want the computer to compose himself. So all the field of algorithmic composition, of course, I want to apply to this system. In general, I would divide between two kinds of algorithmic composition. The one I would call is the generative one. That means that I have formulas. A very simple example would be the chromatic line. Yeah. Yeah, and all this that can be done with one mouse click. Or a very popular algorithm is the Fibonacci series. Let's apply this. I'm applying it to the number of tones of a chromatic scale upwards, which sounds like this. Yeah, and of course that's Johannes Kreidler. Yeah. But what I like much more is to use also random values. So not a fixed formula, but some randomness. For example, a random scale. Now. And every time I'm producing it again, it's a different scale. And again. So either the random formula is it's either a semitone or two semitones upwards for 20 times, I think. And of course, and now I can generate lots of them. And again, it's well known by Johannes Kreidler, these things. Now, but what I'm more interested in is, okay, and of course now I can, by hand, again, make, so to say, mistakes or simply change it. Yeah? I listen to it and say, oh, let's move them upwards and move them a bit down. Let's, yeah, maybe also here. So that's a really nice way to compose. Yeah, okay, I want to have some more, and let's. Yeah, okay, let's put them there, but it has to be longer, and maybe a bit slower. Oh no, that's it. So that's a way to compose, simply by hearing, do I like it or not? Okay, let's change something, and so on and so forth. Okay, but now talking about algorithms, the second way I prefer much more, which I would call the additive algorithms. I mean that now let's take the random. Where's my random scale? No. Okay, where is it? Here. Okay, again the random scale, and now say I wanna exchange some tones. I give a percentage, say 30. That's around 30% of all tones are exchanged with each other. So then that's the result. Yeah, and again 30%, and again. Of course, it becomes then more and more irregular. I had, sorry, I have to look briefly up which is the key. Oh, it's not written here. Okay, again the random scale. The next additive algorithm would be, now let's move some pitches up and down. So say it's always with percentage. So this is about, say, 25% of all pitches, but randomly chosen, are then changed to the maximum of an octave, 12 semitones. Let's do it. Okay, and then, yeah, or again, shit, I thought I had, where's my random scale? Ah, here. Yeah. Good. Or let's make it much more. Let's say 3 octaves, and again. So, but every time the result is, of course, different due to random processes. Or now let's make a mirroring. Again, a random scale is only for explaining it. Yeah? I take the random scale always. So now I can make a horizontal mirroring. It's the Umkehrung, yeah. Let's take as an axis this pitch, and now we have, of course, the opposite. Or again, a random scale. And now, going to the rhythm, now with a given percentage, say 33% of all tones are then moved in time to the maximum of, okay, with time units, as you can see, I have, these are my time units. If it was tempo 60, then these would be milliseconds. So 2000 are then 2 seconds, 2000 milliseconds. But with tempo 100, it's of course faster. And now I can, let's say, to the maximum of 300 time units, rhythm is changed of 33% of all tones, and then that's the result. Okay, still not so far away. Let's do more. Let's do more. Yeah, and again we have now more time irregularity. Let's increase the maximum interval much more, then again it's much more randomness. Or now the vertical mirroring, so that's the crab, the Krebs. As an axis, take the 2500, and then of course it's this one. Or, oh, that's also nice. Or let's take the, okay, now I'm thinking more about, it's a graphic, yeah? So regard this now like on Photoshop to be really a graphic thing, or like Johannes Kreidler also said, that now we are rotating it a bit, giving an angle, say, of 11 degrees. And from one fixed point on, let's take 60 and 68. And now we have, so that's the original. And so, and now more and more rotating. Of course, always in a chromatic, and so on and so forth. Do it more and more and more. Or, again, a random scale, and now I make a remix of the whole form. So that's our original. Let's divide it into 3 parts, and these 3 parts are then mixed in a new order. Let's see what he does. Okay, now we have. It's an easy, small example. But when having bigger structures, then the result can be quite surprising. Or, okay, now let's make glissando on every tone. It's my original. Now let's make lots of glissandi on every tone. And then we've. Yeah. Or let's change it a bit. It was slower now, yeah. Let's make the big glissandi bigger. By the way, this is the volume. Yeah, if I move the object upper and lower, then the volume is higher or lower. Okay, let's make another glissando here, and maybe not the Okay, now let's give it a new rhythm. I've done this, and give it now a rhythmic proportion of 2 to 1 to 3, with the basic value of say 125, and so now bum ba dum ba dum. Okay, now let's remove 50% of all tones. By chance chosen 50%, so then we only it's fragmented. Now, on the other hand, now let's fill with tones, say 50% of new tones. And again, now the question is, where do these tones come from? I have programmed this algorithm in a way that he sees, okay, we have piano tones going upwards, and I'm trying to, with a certain deviation, add some new tones. So the deviation is in the time and rhythm domain to a certain degree. I could change this degree, but now, yeah, the computer is composing himself, you could say. Or now let's combine two things. First, I remove again 50%. So, and I'll do it a bit more. So, and now I'm filling the breaks. Let's fill the breaks with the deviation of an octave, and then we have this. Yeah. So all the gaps of my fantasy are then filled by the computer. Or, yeah, let's make a diminution, old counterpoint technique. Yeah. So it's the doubling the tones. With a given variety, or again. No. Yeah. Or, okay, now having sex. I have three different kinds: Catholic, real, and with the neighbor. That means, and I can say how much children they have to the maximum. Let's first make it, okay, with the neighbor. Say each tone is having sex with his neighbor. Okay, I don't give a variability, and to the maximum of 2 children. And if I'm doing this, then it should be always, yeah, the in between all of them, in the time and in the pitch. So these are the children. If I would do this again, but giving a more variability. So of course our children are not only the mean between the man and woman, but some variability, genetic variability comes up. So if I'm increasing the variability, then some children are quite different from the parents. But at least we can still recognize quite a big variability already, still recognize a bit the movement upwards. But you could also think of now Catholic would mean that it's almost the same like with the neighbor, but that each tone has sex with one other tone. So we only have couples for their whole lifetime, so to say, and well, the Catholics, maybe they have lots of children, say 5, and then let's see what happens. Okay, that's that one. But it could also be real. And reality is that not everyone has sex with, they're not only couples, some tones have sex with several others and others don't have. Maybe then let's take up to 3 children and let's see what's then, okay, that's how reality sounds like. I mean, this is, it's a bit funny, but this is a algorithmic technique called, these are evolutionary algorithms. Yeah? So this evolution of tones of new generations, and Yeah, and then the next step would be the natural process of selecting them. Not only the strongest and the fittest of the tones, which in this case means the ones I like, I'm only choosing and the rest is away. So in general, of course, well, the computer doesn't have a taste. There is a lot of randomness in these processes, but for me as a composer then, I'm choosing simply the best results, the ones I like. And I have much more of these modules, remixing, instrumentation change, spectral remix, etc., etc. I'm constantly composing more of these algorithms. All these examples are only examples with a simple model to be edited, this random scale. But please imagine now applying these algorithms to a given original like this one. Then really unpredictable things come up. Of course, a lot of nonsense, but also with some pearls, which I am then selecting out. That's serendipity, finding something good by accident. And this way I am composing since years in cooperation with the computer. You could call it a coitus with him. Just to get an impression, this is the COIT score of one of my latest pieces, die sich sammelnde Erfahrung Ben der Ton, for 5 instruments and samples. I forgot to mention earlier that you can also enter notes into COIT with a MIDI device like a keyboard. So I can improvise and COIT is making a score out of it. And now, as a last example of these processes, I want to show combinations. Here I've prepared a combination of, I have to enter here. Oh, I have to do it from hand. So what I'm doing is I'm making a duplication of the whole. Yeah. Okay, with no delay, and I make a duplication, let's say 2 times, and then I make a bit the pitches, changing the pitches about, say, only 3 semitones and about 40%, or say 50%. And also the rhythm is the position in time. Let's change here also, say, up to 333 units. Okay, now I'm curious what comes up. Yeah. Yeah, out of my very simple scale, again. Now with 1 key bang, I have something like this. This could be compared when thinking of Photoshop is like a blur effect. Yeah? And now you could imagine when watching Photoshop, I wrote down only some of the available effects. So there are blur effects, sharpen effects, edge effects, noise effects, enhanced photo, 3D effects, artistic effects, geometric effects, and so on and so forth. Now imagine the same in a, how it could be called, sound shop, like Harry says. Then how would these effects then be called? There's the Lachenmann section, the Xenakis, the Nono, Riemann, Fuhrer, Fernihau, the pathos effects, avant-garde effects, 10 techniques, fragment effects, spectral effects, so on and so forth. That was also a big part of the discussion, of the controversy with Klaus-Steffen Mahnkopf, because he said, first of all, that's impossible. And if it was possible, no one wants to have this. This would be the hell. Okay, so to the first point, it is possible to a certain degree. You cannot invent the aesthetic of Lachenmann, but once it is invented, you can make style copies of it. Of course, I hear lots of more or less style copies of Lachenmann aesthetic in your music. So, since this is well known, it can be formalized to quite some degree, I believe, on the computer and do it. And so, yeah, with this blur effect, this goes into the direction of Xenakis, but also some patterns by Bert Furrer are quite formula-like, yeah? Which is nothing against the music by Bert Furrer, on the opposite. But when it's well known, and of course this is the postmodern situation that we're looking on history of the 20th century music, so all these things are available, and more they can be formalized on the computer. And yeah, and the second point is, yeah, but this is hell. Yeah, but it's the case. You cannot. Yes, I mean, but it's much more increasing when you can do it with the clicks and okay, take 30% of Lachenmann, Nari, Führer. So it's so easy to do, yeah. With some mouse clicks, every dilettante, so to say, he can also compose his avant-garde piece. Okay, let's look. So, but we have to deal with this situation. Yeah, it was always more or less the case, but it's increasing a lot with computers. I mean, at the moment, my software, I'm writing for myself, but you could at least imagine that there is a general sound shop program once available. Yeah, and then you can make thousands. There are already also programs for producing Bach fugues. I mean, David Cope is an interesting guy who developed for his whole life software to create music by Bach, more or less. And yeah, at least it is worth imagining it. How would it be if all this was available by some mouse clicks? But that was a big issue in the controversy. Yeah, so this again, we are in a situation of remixing all these techniques and adding, of course, add something to it. When everybody can do it, and when the computer himself, or herself can do it 1,000, 1,000,000 times, then you should somehow have an additional conceptual idea how to use all these techniques. Okay, now so we are combining all of these guys together. Okay, now the next thing is the E-player, using all these samples. I think, well, nowadays we have the possibility to record all the instruments, the real instruments. It's not about MIDI sound, it's the real recordings in a high quality of each single tone in all different volumes. You can press the key. So, and these all become data, and that's what I actually have on my computer, to quite a lot of big amount. Still, it could be much more. I'm very curious about this contemporary publication by Thomas Hummel, which was just released 3 weeks ago, which I hope is has much more samples than I already have. But I think I already have quite a big amount, about 50 gigabytes for the instruments, with extended techniques, of course. And now to show you some examples how I use these samples. It started already 7 years ago with a piece for piano and tape, where I was working with a combination of the live piano and samples of piano tones combined together. And I'm really working very scrupulous, and it's a hard job on the concert hall to get a good mix together of the live instrument and the loudspeaker. But it is possible when you need, of course, a good loudspeaker, as good as the piano is. And then the sound quality can be so good or even better than the live piano. And then put the loudspeaker behind the piano, for example, and then the blend works quite well, I think. To give you an example. And of course what I'm doing is with the samples that are there, I can have micro intervals there, I can have glissandi, but half of it was played live, which cannot be seen here, but maybe, yeah, I think you couldn't really distinguish between the live piano and the samples in this case. With the piano it works pretty well. Or then in 2007 was the first piece I really composed with. This piano piece I wrote notes on with paper and rubber. And in 2007, the first time I tried to compose with these samples. And it was also then the idea of the piece, which simply is called 3,300 sounds, which sound like this. And then it was played in 2008, for example, and then one percussionist became ill. And it was not possible to replace him by other percussionists, so the only possible solution then was to replace him with the E-player samples. And again, it worked. Or then in 2009, and in 2007 I already started to program my software, COIT. And in 2009, then the first time I also conceptually included the idea of the economics of music in this piece. The idea was that a Chinese composer composed music for me in my style, so to say. I gave him pieces of mine with the task to write a new piece in my style, which was very cheap because he was in China, and also an Indian programmer had to do the same with software. Yeah, but there also then was a problem that the Chinese guy, he added some instruments we didn't have on the performance. And we said, okay, we don't have the money for that, but this work is about buying music in a cheap way. So we add the additional instruments are then be played with the help of E-player. If you close your eyes in the concert hall, maybe you don't notice the difference. So what are the possibilities of using this E-player? Of course, that's not, there is Conlon and Caro, of course, who did the player piano music since the 1940s. First of all, you can make the virtuosity, which is not impossible by a human. For example, in my piece Living in a Box, maybe then the first piece where I really used to a big amount, or as an idea for almost the whole piece, the use of combining live instruments with now not only player piano, but a player ensemble. So we have the live ensemble and a E-player ensemble added together. And so, for example, then working with virtuosity, that's the beginning of the piece. This is Ensemble Modern playing. Or another thing is glissandi and micro-intervals with instruments that normally cannot do this. Again, in my piano piece 5, I made use of this quite a lot. Or then impossible registers. Again, yeah, that we can have a piano over the range of the piano. In my piece, die sich sammelnde Erfahrung, then der Ton. I was using this, you can see it, and the piano player is or then there's a whole piano cadenza, so to say. The live piano player, she is only making additional movements. Yeah, and all of this was I was drawing here. Yeah, these were composed with this function. And one last point is hybrid instruments. When you have this big bank with all the samples, then you can combine these samples together, that you have half of the overtone structure of a marimba phone and the other half of, say, the snare drum. And I've made quite a lot of hybrid instruments also to have an additional possibility for instrumentation. So this is this section. Okay, let's see, for example, a timpani and a snare. Or piano and marimba. Or, say, cello pizzicato and trombone with a harmon mute. Or, yeah, what's that? Viola pizzicato and piano damped. I think here you can get quite well here the pizzicato aspect and the piano aspect, which maybe played alone might sound a bit like plastic, but from a good loudspeaker combined then with live viola, live piano, and so on, then you have quite a big amount of possibilities of having instrumentation effects, for example. Okay, so there's also in the last years there came up the idea of live coding, live programming on stage. So one time I was also doing it in Frankfurt in a concert. I was composing live on stage a small piece with my software. Okay, so I'm come to the end. Still a problem for me is this problem of having not enough displays. I really don't understand the world. Why don't we already have all our walls being displays, that I can every morning change the color of my walls, for example. So I have 3 monitors, which is still much too less for me. So that's still a problem. But I also would like to, this kind of solution, and then having a touch screen, which is still unfortunately too expensive for me. But then I could again writing really with the hand, which is somehow a bit with the more intuition than with the mouse. But that's possible in the future. Of course, Johannes Kreidler had his UPIC system, so this is the pioneer of all of this. I know that. And I would love to have this kind of monitors, which is again too expensive for me, but having all of these monitors and then working on it. And I would love to have one monitor with my COIT score on another monitor where I already have the real traditional score version, and I can change something here, and then I change this visual here, and the other way around, changing the notes, and so that would be great. So. And one last question is composing too easy now? Well, for me, this is work of now five years of very, very much work writing the software. So for me, it was a very big work before. But when other people are now wanted to use this software, for them, it could be pretty easy, with the idea of the sound shop to produce new music, which can work. And Klaus Schaff-Markov again said, in the arts you have to work hard. Only then it is art. it's a very general discussion about technology. Yeah? Does technology make life better or not? My opinion is it makes life better. My opinion is that there are so many problems still on Earth that we have to be happy for every technology which help us having life easier. There are still so many tasks, and also aesthetically in the arts there are still enough tasks that we can be happy for every help, for example, with machines like the computer. Okay, thanks for the attention.